One of the things that people have asked us since the very first pitch meeting we ever had with investors is how are you going to get developers to sign up for Runscope? So at Twilio, I was really lucky that when I joined, it was still small, but they had a very good product, and they already had some of the initial philosophies going for how to sign up developers. And we were lucky to really run with that and turn it into a much bigger number. But telling investors I'm just going to do what I did at Twilio wasn't quite enough. I mean, it worked, but you need something more tactical than that. So in lieu of having a giant event budget like Twilio did, we had to find other ways to get developers to sign up. So going back in history, there was a site called Hurl. Does anybody know Hurl or recognize this screenshot? One person. I mean, the whole crowd. Two. Hurl was really, really instrumental in me starting Runscope, and I didn't kind of realize it till later. So this was started by Leah Culver and Chris Wanstroth as just a way to make HTTP requests through a simple web-based interface. And we would use this at Twilio all the time. Like, we use this for support constantly because we needed a way to show people how the Twilio API worked, but curl was largely out of the question for helping a lot of those people. We used this so much at Twilio that I actually acquired it while I was there. I paid for it with a credit card, and I put it on an expense report, and then later asked for forgiveness when I got in trouble for making Twilio's first acquisition via credit card and an expense report. But the Twilio support team continued to use it, and the evangelism team continued to use it there even after I left. Well, while I was also at Twilio, another site came along called RequestBin, which was made by Jeff Lindsay, who coined the term webhook. And this was another sort of instrumental site for us. This was something that got us thinking about how to make APIs more visible, and was something that I heavily used again at Twilio, because very webhook-based, trying to illustrate that to a potential customer was very tricky sometimes. So these two sites were really heavily used. In fact, tons of API documentation across the internet links to these, particularly RequestBin. So you can see MailChimp, Stripe, and SendGrid here. This is just one of many. I can show you the referral logs now. The problem was we went and built a whole bunch of inspection tools for APIs, and they were great, and they were awesome. And we went to API providers. I think I emailed all three of these and said, hey, we've got this great, powerful tool. It's like RequestBin on steroids. You should link to it. And they all said, nah, we already linked to RequestBin. Why would we link to Runscope? Because there was really three things. One, RequestBin and Hurl had no sign up. They did one thing really well. There was not a lot of things to understand. They solved that one problem really well, and they were free. Runscope was the opposite of this. You had to sign up. It did a lot of things really well, and it was eventually not free if you used a certain amount of it, and so it felt very commercial. So they felt like they were pitching for another startup, which is not what they wanted, right? So we couldn't replace the existing links, so we acquired the targets. Instead of trying to get them to update their links, we just went back to Twilio, and we went to Jeff Lindsay, and we said, hey, you're not maintaining these anymore. How would you like us to take them over and remove you from getting all the complaints when they go down? We'll make them stable. And they both said, sure. And thankfully, they said sure for free. So we acquired both of those sites for free. So this got us really hooked on the idea of what we sort of coined later as a community project. So as you can see here, we've rebranded Hurl to feel more like a Runscope thing. We've put an unobtrusive sort of ad on the bottom for what we do that goes down a little bit further. We've added some features. We've basically made sure they stay up. We did this with RequestBin as well, sort of rebranding. We also built a couple of our own. So I think that's the next slide. So here are the three that we built that we still currently operated. There were also two more that we built that we've since given away because as experiments they failed and other people wanted to run them. So we did that instead. But these are the big three, Hurl and RequestBin being by far the most popular ones. Hurl actually, I don't know if I should admit this, gets more traffic every month than Runscope.com does. So it's an extremely popular utility for making HTTP requests. RequestBin is slightly lower than that. We also, sort of in parallel to this, thought, well, we can't buy them all, or we would if we could, but not everyone will sell to us. So we actually have a suite of a couple other ones that we just sponsor. So the sponsors levels vary on some of these. From most cases, it's just a link that says sponsored by Runscope. We either pay for the hosting or the SSL certificate or some other piece of it. API changelog is the one that we built that we handed off to somebody else. And JSON generator is an interesting one. That's our newest one because we didn't pay for a link. We actually paid to get our retargeting tag planted on the site. So that lets us now run ads against that audience, and that site gets roughly the same amount of traffic as RequestBin does every month. So now we have another huge audience that we can do for retargeting, which leads me to retargeting. So the referrals, like the just organic referrals from these sites was really good, and we got a lot of signups from that, and that was sort of our initial boost. But simultaneously, we were playing around with a lot of retargeting stuff, and we dropped our tag on all of these sites. And what we've seen in the year plus since we've done that is that our community projects, between direct organic referrals and retargeting, refer about 33% of our signups, for an average cost per acquisition for a sign-up for retargeting at about $2. And on the whole, I consider this roughly like free signups. So we have had a really good run of success with this. So we are constantly on the lookout for new community projects. I feel I may have some other bidders now against me on a lot of these projects, but we were just sitting down before negotiating to take over another one. We'll build them when it makes sense, but we're always on the lookout for additional community projects that we can help developers solve a problem and eventually lead them to water and Runscope and hopefully healthier APIs.